This video is not your typical anti-aging tips nonsense. No creams, no tight pants, just 8 subtle signs that your body, your spirit, and your sense of self are shifting in ways most people miss. Like how your hands don't grip the way they used to, but suddenly hold more meaning. Or how your voice gets softer, but carries more truth. And yes, even how your belly is no longer flat, but full of wisdom, and maybe a little apple pie. Don't miss part 6, by the way. That belly you've been hiding under oversized sweaters? Turns out it's telling you a lot about your hormones, your mood, and your energy. It's not just about what's growing, it's about what's unspoken. And once you hear it, you may just stop sucking it in and start listening. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, who is this softer, slower, strangely wiser man? This one's for you. And hey, if this feels like home, hit that like and subscribe button. We're on a journey to reach 1,000 subscribers, not for fame, but so we can keep making gentle, funny, soul-deep content for you and the folks you love. Okay, let's get started. 1. The changing hands, the quiet language of touch. Let's talk hands. These beautiful, strange little tools we've been dragging around since birth. Gripping, fixing, holding, waving, feeding, praying. They've been with us through everything. And now they creak, they drop spoons, they shake a little when we try to butter toast. You ever notice that? You go to write a birthday card and suddenly the B in happy birthday looks like it's trying to escape the page. Let me tell you about Raymond. Raymond was a carpenter, one of those guys who could build a bookshelf from nothing but intuition and an old measuring tape. His hands were like living maps. Scarred, stained, knuckled like tree roots. He didn't need to say much. His hands said everything. But arthritis came knocking in his late 70s. And one morning, he sat there staring at his shoelaces, unable to tie them. His fingers felt like strangers. He grumbled. He cursed. Then he just went quiet. Later that day, his granddaughter Lila walked in and saw him struggling with a shirt button. She didn't flinch, she just walked over, took his hand and said, "Grandpa, these hands built our whole family." That was the moment. He didn't cry because of pain, he cried because he was seen. And that, my friend, is when I reminded him of something we both heard once in a little monastery tucked in the mountains. The hands are extensions of the heart. In Buddhism, we use our hands to offer incense, pour tea, fold in prayer, receive teachings. They are instruments of intention. So when your hands start changing, when they lose their grip or shake a little, it doesn't mean they're giving up. It means they're shifting roles. They're moving from doing to being. From building cabinets to building connection. Now Raymond holds Lila's hand every evening as they sit on the porch. He doesn't fix things anymore. He just holds space. And let me tell you, it's just as sacred. So if your hands are slower now, don't be embarrassed. They're not broken. They're evolving, from tools of action to instruments of grace. You're not losing your touch. You're learning to touch the world more gently. And honestly, that's the best kind of strength. 2. The fading voice, when a man's sound grows softer. Ah yes, the voice. That mighty instrument we once used to charm, instruct, argue, sing in the shower, and call out across football fields or parking lots. And now it sounds like it's floating away on a soft breeze. You're halfway through a story, one you've told a dozen times, one that once had 'em rolling, and someone leans in and says, "What was that, Grandpa?" And you think, what do you mean? What was that? That was the punchline. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas was a retired librarian, had the kind of voice that could hush a room full of middle schoolers just by saying page 12. It was deep, steady, the kind of voice that made you want to sit down and listen, maybe even behave yourself. But somewhere around 78, his voice softened, not in spirit, just in volume. At first, he thought people were just rude, talking over him, interrupting. But eventually he realized they weren't trying to ignore him. They just couldn't hear him anymore. He said to me one day, "Ram, I used to speak." And people paused. Now I speak, and they check their phones. Ouch. So I asked him, "When you speak now, where are you speaking from? Your throat or your heart?" Because here's the thing, your voice may get quieter with age, but that doesn't mean it has to get smaller. In Buddhism, we have this thing called right speech. Not just saying the right thing, but saying it in the right way. Truthful, kind, timely, spoken from presence. You don't need to shout truth to make it heard. You just need to mean it. So Thomas started doing vocal exercises in the morning, lip trills and humming with the cat. He read aloud to the trees, and when he spoke at dinner, he didn't try to speak up. He spoke in, from somewhere deeper, and something magical happened. His family leaned in. One day, his granddaughter looked up and said, "Papa, your voice sounds like a cozy blanket." That's it, folks. You may not be the loudest guy at the table anymore, but you can still be the one everyone leans toward when you speak. Because when your words come from stillness, they don't need to echo. They just need to land. And you, my friend, you still have a lot to say. 3. The growing ears when cartilage doesn't quit. Let's talk ears. Not the poetic kind that hear the whispers of the soul or whatever. I'm talking about your ears, the ones on your head. Yeah, those. Because if you've made it past 60, there's a good chance you've looked in the mirror lately and thought, were these always this big? The answer? No, my friend. No, they were not. Now, don't panic. It's not a curse. It's not karma for ignoring your wife that one time in 1983. It's just cartilage doing its thing. See, unlike the rest of the body that has the decency to stop growing at some point, cartilage is like that guy who shows up late to the party and refuses to leave. It just keeps going. Slowly, quietly, like a monk ringing a tiny bell you can't quite hear, until one day you look at an old wedding photo and say, "Hey, what happened to my ears?" Let me tell you about Walter, a retired park ranger who lived up in the Oregon woods. Tough as an oak tree, kind as a spring breeze. He spent his life listening to birds, to wind, to crying kids on school field trips. One day, flipping through an old scrapbook, Walter saw a photo of himself back in his ranger days. Strong jawline, firm ears, that classic 70s park ranger hat. Then he looked in the mirror. Same jawline, same soul. But those ears? Let's just say they'd been doing some reflecting. At first he sighed, tugged at a lobe like a man checking the ripeness of a peach. Then he chuckled. And somewhere in the back of his memory, he recalled a line from a Buddhist book someone left at the ranger station years ago. Long ears are the sign of deep listening. And suddenly, it wasn't so bad. Because those ears had heard things. Grief, joy, whispers, wind chimes, children's giggles. The last, "I love you," from someone who never wasted words. So now when Walter looks in the mirror, he doesn't flinch. He nods. "Thanks, old friends," he says. "You've been good company." So next time you notice your ears have grown, don't reach for the measuring tape. Reach for your memories, because those big ears, they mean you've been paying attention. And baby, that's enlightenment with a side of wisdom. Before, the disappearing calves, shrinking strength below the knees. Let's talk about something sacred today. Your calves. Yes, those proud little muscles below the knees that used to flex without asking, carry your groceries, leap upstairs two at a time, and, if you're anything like me, looked fantastic in a pair of khaki shorts back in 1978. And now, they've started vanishing, quietly, like a magician's assistant slipping off stage. You pull on your pants and think, these used to fit differently. And then you look in the mirror and realize your once mighty calves have started whispering instead of shouting. Let me introduce you to Samuel, a 76-year-old retired woodworker who once had legs like tree trunks. Not the flashy gym kind. No, these were strong, honest legs. Legs that built cabinets and caught toddlers mid-fall. But one winter afternoon, on his way up the stairs to his daughter's house, he stopped halfway. Not because of pain, not because of breath, because his legs simply said, "We're taking a break, Sam." He looked down, puzzled. Later that night, sitting in his recliner with a mug of chamomile tea and a cat on his lap, he stared at his legs and said, "Well, boys, when did you turn into chopsticks?" And that's when he remembered something from a Buddhist retreat he wandered into once, mostly for the soup. A monk had said, "The legs are your roots. When the wind of time blows, the tree depends on its roots." Now, Samuel wasn't trying to become a bodybuilder. He wasn't chasing his youth. But he did miss the feeling of being rooted, so he began again. Quietly, tenderly, heel lifts at the kitchen sink, toe walks during commercial breaks, whispers to his legs like, "You're still here, I'm still here. Let's dance." 3 months later, he climbed those same stairs and didn't stop. The truth is, your calves don't care how old you are. They just want to know, are you still talking to us? So if your legs feel like they're shrinking, don't grieve, don't shout, whisper, listen. Because sometimes strength isn't loud or flashy. Sometimes it's just the quiet faith that your body still wants to carry you, if you're willing to meet it halfway. 4. The slower gait, when every step becomes a story. So, let's talk about walking. Once upon a time, your legs were like rockets. You zipped through crowds, power walked through airports, even chased after toddlers or ice cream trucks, depending on the day. And now you're walking like the floor might disappear at any moment. You shuffle into the kitchen and think, "Why does this tile feel like a mountain?" You reach the porch and feel like you've completed a pilgrimage. But here's the thing, maybe you have. Let me tell you about Agnes. Agnes was a nurse for 35 years, tough as nails, light on her feet. She walked like she had an emergency waiting around every corner, even after retirement. Her grocery runs were full-speed missions. Her neighbors used to joke she had cruise control on her sneakers. Then she tripped on her own garden hose. Just a quick fall. No broken bones, just a broken rhythm. Suddenly, her walk slowed. Not because she wanted it to, but because her body whispered, "Let's pay attention now." At first, she hated it. "I feel like a tortoise in orthopedic shoes," she told me. But then she wandered into a local meditation group where they did this thing called kinhin, walking meditation. No destination, no Fitbit, just walking, slowly, one step for each breath. She thought it was ridiculous, until it wasn't. Until, step by step, she started noticing little things. The warmth of the sun. The tickle of breeze behind her ears. Number 6. The expanding midsection. The belly that doesn't budge. Ah, the belly. 1 minute, it's a flat plane of youth, something you barely think about. And then sometime after your 60s, it starts sneaking into your life like an uninvited house guest. You wake up one morning, go to button your favorite jeans, and suddenly it's like you've entered a negotiation. "I swear these fit last week." Sure, buddy. Sure they did. Let me tell you about Daniel, a retired electrician from Ohio who always kept busy. Wired up hundreds of houses in his day, raised a family, fixed everything from fuses to broken hearts. But after his wife passed, things got quieter. His dinners became simpler. Less fresh food, more toast. He still walked the dog, still moved. But he noticed something. His shirts, once loose, now hugged him like a high school crush. At first, he tried denial. "It's the dryer. It shrunk everything." Classic. But then his grandson climbed on his lap, gave him a big hug and said, "Grandpa, your belly's squishy like a beanbag chair." Oof. Daniel looked in the mirror that night, took a deep breath, and met the stranger in the glass. And instead of attacking the belly like it was some enemy to conquer, he paused, and this strange little line from a Buddhist podcast floated into his head. The body is not a battlefield. It's a temple with plumbing issues. That made him laugh, then cry, then laugh again. So Daniel started treating his belly like an old friend who just overstayed his welcome, not rudely, but lovingly. He swapped his midnight snacks for a mug of peppermint tea, took walks, and called them pilgrimages. He even started doing squats next to the recliner, what he called his thigh enlightenment practice. But here's the magic. It wasn't the belly that changed first. It was the relationship. In Buddhist tradition, the hara, just below the belly button, is the energetic home of courage. So instead of thinking, I've let myself go, Daniel began saying, I've arrived. And when he touched his belly, he'd say, thank you for carrying me, through grief, through joy, through midnight snacks and teenage heartbreak. So if your belly's grown with age, don't panic. Don't declare war. Just take a deep breath, offer it a pat, and say, well, hello, old friend, you showed up right on time. 7. The scent of time. Why older men smell different. So let's talk about this thing no one warns you about when you're young and full of ego. You reach a certain age, and suddenly your favorite sweater smells like the back of a library. Or maybe like a leather armchair that's been contemplating philosophy for a few decades. You sniff, you check the laundry basket, you wonder, did something die by behind the couch? But nope, it's just you, my friend. It's your skin, having a little quiet chat with the passage of time. Now, before you panic and start ordering every deodorizer on Amazon, let me explain. There's this sneaky little molecule called 2-nonenal. Sounds like a Marvel villain, right? But it's just your body's way of saying, hey buddy, we've been around the block. As you age, your skin chemistry changes. The oils get wiser, the cells throw fewer parties, and all that inner transformation, your body's sacred version of letting go, produces this subtle aroma. Not bad, just vintage. Think of it as the musk of enlightenment. Ode experience. This isn't about poor hygiene. It's not because you skipped a shower. It's because, biologically speaking, you've entered the season of incense. Let me tell you about Elliot, a retired piano tuner up in Maine. His life was simple. Tea in the morning, naps with the cat, and occasional jazz records when the mood was right. One day, his daughter hugs him and says, Dad, you smell like home. He panicked. Switched laundry detergents. Bought a new cologne that claimed to capture the scent of masculinity, whatever that means. But the scent stuck. Later, while listening to a Buddhist talk on YouTube, one of those soft-spoken monks who makes you cry and laugh at the same time, Elliot hears this line. The scent of age is devotion made visible, or rather, smellable. And just like that, he stopped scrubbing so hard. He realized the smell wasn't a problem, it was a presence. A sign that he'd lived and loved and remembered. So if your skin started telling stories your mouth hasn't, bless it. You're not rotting, you're ripening. The young folks smell like body spray and ambition. You smell like wood smoke, old love letters, and freedom. Now that's sexy. 8. The slowing blink. Micro expressions that reveal your true age. So here's a fun little surprise nobody tells you about aging. You don't just slow down in your walk, you slow down in your face. Yep. One day you're telling a joke at the dinner table, something you've perfected over the years, and everyone's laughing except your granddaughter, who squints at you and says, Grandpa, are you mad? And you're sitting there thinking, mad? I was just getting to the punchline. Let me tell you about Leon, a retired piano teacher, sharp as a tack, heart like warm bread. In his younger days, his eyebrows could conduct an entire orchestra. You'd know if he was amused, confused, or about to offer you life advice just by watching his face. But by 74, things had slowed. His blinks came like gentle waves, not lightning strikes. His smile had a delay, like it was walking up from the basement. One night at a family gathering, someone asked him, "You okay, Grandpa?" He nodded. "I'm more than okay." But inside he thought, why does it feel like the world stopped seeing me? That night, staring into the bathroom mirror with his toothbrush in hand and half a shirt tucked in, he remembered something a Zen teacher had told him years ago. When the body grows still, let the spirit move louder. And boom, there it was. The whole thing. He didn't need Botox. He didn't need to animate his face like he was back in community theater. He just needed to be present in a new way. So Leon started blinking on purpose. Seriously. Blinked with love. Smiled like he was seasoning soup. slow, warm, and thoughtful. And guess what? People noticed. Not because his face suddenly turned into a Pixar character, but because when he looked at you, he really looked at you. His eyes said, "I'm here. I see you. I've lived a little." So if your expressions have slowed and your face feels like it's moving in molasses, don't panic. You're not fading, you're ripening. Your blink isn't broken, it's just pausing to listen. Because presence, my friend, doesn't rush. It blinks slowly, breathes deeply, and still manages to say more than words ever could. Well, here we are. 8 quiet signs. 8 little messengers. None of them shouted, but all of them spoke, if we were willing to listen. We've wandered through the scent of aging, the softening of voices, the widening of bellies, the changing rhythm of our walk. We felt the trembling hands, the slower blink, the stretch of ears, and the thinning of calves that once ran like rivers. And if you're like me, maybe you realize something along the way. You're not falling apart, you're just falling into a new season. You see, aging isn't a mistake. It's a masterpiece that unfolds slowly. Your body isn't giving up on you. It's offering you a new way to be with yourself. Maybe your walk is slower, but your presence is deeper. Maybe your grip is weaker, but your touch is kinder. Maybe your voice is quieter, but your words carry more weight. And if you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Not just for watching, but for being open, for being curious, for choosing to see your life not as something fading, but as something ripening. If this video helped you feel even a little more seen, go ahead and give it a gentle thumbs up. And if you think a friend could use this kind of reminder, share it with them. And we'd love to hear from you. What part resonated the most? Was it the voice, the walk, the hands? Leave a comment below and let us know. We read every one. It reminds us we're not just speaking into the void. We're sitting around the same fire together. And if you haven't subscribed yet, well, we'd love to have you as part of this little Sangha. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers so we can keep creating videos like this. For elders, by elders, with a whole lot of compassion and maybe a few laughs. So here's your fortune cookie for the road. Your body is not your enemy. It's your oldest companion, and it's still teaching you how to love. See you in the next one. Take a breath, take your time, and take care.